36. The Philippine president whose economic policy was called Filipino First Policy. Elpidio Quirino, Manuel L. Quezon, Carlos P. Garcia, Manuel A. Rojas. The Philippine president whose economic policy was called the Filipino First Policy was Carlos P. Garcia. This policy, introduced during his presidency, emphasized prioritizing Filipino businesses and industries over foreign interests to boost the national economy and promote Filipino entrepreneurial growth. 37. La Liga Filipina, a propaganda movement, put up a newspaper called To Fight Violence and Injustice PF Spaniards to the Filipinos. Cartilla. La Esperanza. La Solidaridad. Diaryong Tagalog. La Liga Filipina, a reformist group founded by Jose Rizal, did not establish its own newspaper. However, it was closely associated with the newspaper La Solidaridad, which was a significant publication of the propaganda movement. La Solidaridad aimed to address and combat the violence and injustices perpetrated by the Spanish colonial authorities against Filipinos. 38. He is an American general who surrendered his approximately 75,000 troops at the fall of Bataan. General Jonathan Mayhew Wainwright IV. General Edward King Jr. General George M. Parker. General Douglas MacArthur. The American general who surrendered approximately 75,000 troops at the fall of Bataan was General Edward King Jr. This surrender occurred on April 9, 1942, during World War II, when American and Filipino forces were overwhelmed by Japanese troops. 39. A Filipino hero who is known for his pseudonym Paralitico. Apolinario Mabini. Emilio Jacinto. Andres Bonifacio. Gregorio de Jesus. The Filipino hero known for his pseudonym Paralitico is Apolinario Mabini. Mabini, who was paralyzed from the waist down due to polio, played a crucial role as a leader and advisor during the Philippine Revolution against Spanish rule. He is often referred to as the brains of the revolution. 40. He is known as the brains of the Katipunan. Andres Bonifacio. Emilio Jacinto. Apolinario Mabini. Antonio Luna. Emilio Jacinto is known as the brains of the Katipunan. He was a key figure in the Philippine Revolution, serving as an advisor and strategist to Andres Bonifacio, the founder of the Katipunan. Jacinto was also the author of the Cartilla in Katipunan, a primer for new members of the Revolutionary Society. 41. Which of the following was not a reform sought from the Spanish government by the propagandists? Basic human rights for the Filipinos. Consistency of government from absolute to limited monarch. Change of government from absolute to limited monarch. Restoration of Filipino representation in the Cortes. The reform that was not sought from the Spanish government by the propagandists was change of government from absolute to limited monarch. 42. Which of the following former presidents died in a plane crash? Emilio Aguinaldo. Carlos Garcia. Ferdinand Marcos. Ramon Magsaysay. The former president who died in a plane crash was Ramon Magsaysay. He served as the President of the Philippines from 1953 until his death in 1957, when his plane crashed on Mount Mananggol in Cebu. 43. The former President of the U.S. who supported the Tidings-McDuffie Act of 1934. George Washington. William Howard Taft. Franklin D. Roosevelt. Dwight D. Eisenhower. The former President of the U.S. who supported the Tidings-McDuffie Act of 1934 was Franklin D. Roosevelt. The Tidings-McDuffie Act, also known as the Philippine Independence Act, provided a process for the Philippines to gain independence from the United States after a 10-year transitional period. Roosevelt was the sitting president when the act was signed into law. 44. The President who passed RA 6657 or the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Law. Elpidio R. Quirino. Corazon C. Aquino. Fidel V. Ramos. Ferdinand Marcos. The President who passed RA 6657, or the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Law, was Corazon C. Aquino. This law, enacted in 1988, aimed to promote social justice and industrialization through the equitable distribution of agricultural land. 45. Written on this famous work by Emilio Jacinto are the fundamental teachings of the Katipunan. Cartilla. La Solidaridad. Diaryong Tagalog. La Esperanza. The Cartilla in Katipunan served as the guidebook for new members of the Katipunan, outlining the group's principles and moral code. 46. Dr. Jose Rizal wrote this poem before he was executed. La Solidaridad. Mi ultimo adios. Nali mi tanher.
Sa aking mga kababata.
Dr. Jose Rizal wrote the poem Mi ultimo adios before he was executed. This poignant farewell poem reflects his love for his country and his readiness to die for its freedom. 47. One of Dr. Jose Rizal's objective as a propagandist is the assimilation of the Philippines to Spain. Fake news. False. True. Misleading. True. One of Dr. Jose Rizal's objectives as a propagandist was indeed the assimilation of the Philippines into Spain. He believed that by making the Philippines a province of Spain, Filipinos would gain the same rights and privileges as Spanish citizens, thereby addressing many of the social injustices and abuses they suffered under colonial rule. 48. He was a former president of the USA who appointed General MacArthur to rule and govern the Philippines. George Washington. Franklin D. Roosevelt. Dwight D. Eisenhower. William Howard Taft. William Howard Taft was the former president of the USA who played a significant role in the governance of the Philippines. Taft served as the first civilian governor-general of the Philippines from 1901 to 1903, before becoming the President of the United States. He was not directly involved in appointing General MacArthur, but he laid the groundwork for American civil administration in the Philippines. 49. What was the name of Diego Silang's wife, who continued the revolt against the Spaniards in the Ilocos region after Diego's death? Gabriela. Manuela. Geronima. Luciana. Diego Silang's wife, who continued the revolt against the Spaniards in the Ilocos region after Diego's death, was Gabriela Silang. She is remembered as a brave and determined leader who carried on the fight for Filipino independence following her husband's assassination. 50. He exercises all executive, legislative and judicial powers in the small communities during the pre-colonial era. Saging. Datu. Babalan. Timawa. During the pre-colonial era in the Philippines, the leader who exercised all executive, legislative, and judicial powers in small communities was the Datu. The Datu was the chieftain or leader of a barangay, community, and held significant authority and responsibility over his people. 51. Who created the designs for the Philippine national flag? Marcela Agancillo. Apolinario Mabini. Emilio Aguinaldo. Julian Felipe. Emilio Aguinaldo created the designs for the Philippine national flag. The actual sewing of the flag was done by Marcela Agancillo, along with her daughter Lorenza and Delfina Herbosa de Natividad, in Hong Kong. 52. The composer of the Philippine national anthem, Lupang Hinirang. Julian Felipe. Adair de Leon. Macario Sacaue. Jose Palma. The composer of the Philippine national anthem, Lupang Hinirang, Julian Felipe. He composed the music for the anthem, while the lyrics were written by Jose Palma. 53. when were the 24-hour nationwide emergency hotlines launched? August 5, 2016. August 1, 2016. July 30, 2016. July 29, 2016. The 24-hour nationwide emergency hotlines were launched on August 1, 2016. 54. Who named the country Islas de San Lazaro? Alvaro Saavedra. Miguel Lopez de Legazpi. Ferdinand Magellan. Diego Barbosa. The country was named Islas de San Lazaro by Ferdinand Magellan during his expedition to the Philippines in 1521. This name was later changed to Las Islas Filipinas in honor of King Philip II of Spain. 55. Who was the hero of the battle at Tirad Pass? Diego Silang. Gregorio del Pilar. Antonio Luna. Macario Sacaue. The hero of the battle at Tirad Pass was Gregorio del Pilar. He was a young Filipino general who bravely defended the pass against American forces during the Philippine-American War in 1899. 56. Who led the longest revolt in the Philippines during the Spanish times? Pal Aris. Francisco Dagahoy. Tamblat. Raja Suleiman. The leader of the longest revolt in the Philippines during the Spanish times was Francisco Dagahoy. His rebellion, known as the Dagahoy Rebellion, lasted for more than 80 years, from 1744 to 1829, making it one of the longest recorded revolts against Spanish colonial rule. 57. The battle fought on May 1, 1898 between American and Spanish forces during the Spanish-American War. It is also known as the Battle of Cavite, Battle of Corregidor, Battle of Bacoor, Battle of Imus, Battle of Manila Bay. The battle fought on May 1, 1898, between American and Spanish forces during the Spanish-American War, and also known as the Battle of Cavite, is the Battle of Manila Bay. This naval battle, led by American Admiral George Dewey, resulted in a decisive victory for the United States Navy over the Spanish Pacific Squadron, effectively establishing American naval supremacy in the region. 58. The date when the Philippines won over the arbitration case regarding the West Philippine Sea on the Permanent Court of Arbitration against China. July 11, 2016. July 14, 2016. July 13, 2016. July 12, 2016. The date when the Philippines won over the arbitration case regarding the West Philippine Sea on the Permanent Court of Arbitration against China was July 12, 2016. 59. It was a surprise military strike by the Imperial Japanese Navy against the United States Naval Base on the morning of December 7, 1941. Battle of the Philippine Sea. Hiroshima bombing. Bombing of Pearl Harbor. The Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. The surprise military strike by the Imperial Japanese Navy against the United States Naval Base on the morning of December 7, 1941, was the bombing of Pearl Harbor. 60. The 8 rays of the sun in the Philippine flag represent the first 8 Filipino heroes that supported the American soldiers in a fight against Japanese invaders. Provinces that revolted and struggled against the abuses of the Japanese Imperial Army. Filipino heroes that led the Filipinos to revolt against the Spanish colonizers. Provinces that revolted and struggled against the abuses of the Spanish friars and conquistadores. The 8 rays of the sun in the Philippine flag represent the first 8 provinces that revolted and struggled against the abuses of the Spanish friars and conquistadores. These provinces are often referred to as the 8 provinces that first rose up against Spanish colonization during the Philippine Revolution. 61. Who was the last general of the Filipino-American Revolution to surrender to the Americans? Simeon Ola. Miguel Malvar. Cornelio Felizardo. Artemio Ricaurute. Simeon Ola is a hero of the Philippine Revolution and was the last general of the Philippines to surrender to the American forces after the Philippine-American War. 62, known as the Fort Mills, it is an island located at the entrance of Manila Bay and has historically been fortified with coastal artillery to defend the entrance of Manila Bay and Manila from attacks by enemy warships. Caballo Island, Carabao Island, El Fraile Island, Corregidor Island. Known as the Fort Mills, the island located at the entrance of Manila Bay, historically fortified with coastal artillery to defend against attacks by enemy warships. Corregidor Island. 63. It was the Philippine Army contingent of the United Nations forces that fought in the Korean War in 1950 to 1953. Philippine Action Force to Korea. Philippine Executive Forces to Korea. Philippine Expeditionary Forces to Korea. Philippine Expendables Forces to Korea. The Philippine Army contingent of the United Nations forces that fought in the Korean War from 1950 to 1953 was known as the Philippine Expeditionary Forces to Korea, PEFTOK. These forces played a significant role in supporting the United Nations efforts during the conflict. 64. What was the name of the Filipino soldier who led the Cavite Mutiny of 1872? General Mariano Noriel. Lieutenant Taviel de Andrade. Father Jose Burgos. Sergeant Lamadrid. The Filipino soldier who led the Cavite Mutiny of 1872 was Sergeant Lamadrid. He was one of the leaders of the mutiny, which was a significant event in Philippine history that contributed to the nationalist movement against Spanish colonial rule. 65. Writer of the Spanish poem Filipinas, from which Lupang Hinirang was adapted from. Julian Felipe. Jose Palma. Macario Sacaue. Adair de Leon. The writer of the Spanish poem Filipinas, from which Lupang Hinirang was adapted, was Jose Palma. His poem was originally written in Spanish and later translated into Tagalog by Julian Felipe to become the lyrics of the Philippine national anthem. 66. He was one of the heroes of the Battle of Hill Erie during the Korean War as a young lieutenant and later served as a president of the Philippines. Fidel V. Ramos. Rodrigo Duterte. Benigno Aquino III. Ferdinand Marcos. The individual who was one of the heroes of the Battle of Hill Erie during the Korean War as a young lieutenant and later served as a president of the Philippines is Fidel V. Ramos. He was a key figure in Philippine military history and later became the 12th president of the Philippines, serving from 1992 to 1998. 67. The oldest legal code retrieved in the Philippines. Bushido Code. Morse Code. Code of Hammurabi. Code of Colantio. The oldest legal code retrieved in the Philippines is the Code of Colantio. However, it's important to note that the authenticity of the Code of Colantio has been widely disputed, with many historians considering it to be a hoax created during the Spanish colonial period. The Code of Colantio was supposedly promulgated by Datu Colantio, a legendary ruler of the island of Negros, but its existence as an authentic pre-colonial legal code is highly doubtful. 68. Who holds the highest position in the Philippines during the Spanish period whose function is to exercise powers in behalf of the Spanish colonial government? Gobernador Silo. Gobernador General. Cabilda. Alcalde Mayor. During the Spanish colonial period in the Philippines, the highest position held by an official who exercised powers on behalf of the Spanish colonial government was the Gobernador General. This position was equivalent to the Governor-General or Viceroy in other Spanish colonies. The Gobernador-General had significant authority over the colony's administration, including military, judicial, and executive powers. 69. Who was the Spanish Governor-General who ordered the deportation of Jose Rizal to Dapitan? Governor Gen. Camilo de Polavija. Governor-General Eulogio Despujol. Governor Gen. Carlos Maria de la Torre. Governor-General Fermin Jodins. The Spanish Governor-General who ordered the deportation of José Rizal to Dapitan was Governor-General Eulogio Despujol. Despujol issued the order after Rizal was implicated in the activities of the Katipunan, a secret revolutionary society fighting for Philippine independence from Spain. 70. She was the first woman member of the Katipunan, July 1893. Segunda Katigbak. Marina Dizon. Gabriela Silang. Gregoria de Jesus. The first woman member of the Katipunan, who joined in July 1893, was Gregoria de Jesus. She was the wife of Andres Bonifacio, the founder of the Katipunan, and played a significant role in the Philippine Revolution. Gregoria de Jesus is often referred to as the mother of the Philippine Revolution.
I hope this boosts your knowledge. The questions and explanations provided here are designed to help you ace your exam. Don't miss part 1, where you'll find crucial questions about the Philippine Constitution. Click on the suggested video to get started.